Guys, so in this video we'll see get employee by id and get all employees to APIs. So in the controller we'll create endpoint for getting the employee details with the id. So basically first I'll create endpoint here in the controller file, employee controller. So let me write a method public async task of something, let's say will return, and get employee by id is the endpoint name that I will specify. And here what we'll do is, so basically this will be an http get endpoint, and here what we'll specify is let's write Pascal naming conventions, get employee by id, and this endpoint. So they basically the get request doesn't contain a request body. We need to either take from route or from query the employee id. Let's say integer employee id, which will fetch the details against that, and basically return type of this one should be action result. Again the generic result will be returning, and here I will add the validation code. Let's say if the employee that has been sent by the client is, let's say, a negative value, so what we can say, let's return a bad request saying that please enter valid employee id, right? So this will be a validation that we'll be adding on the employee id field. Next thing what we'll do is we will add a model. Basically we do have the employee request, but here you can see the employee id field is not present. So what I'll do is I'll create a new model, right click add, let's say class, and we'll create a model class, let's say employee details. Okay, and so in this employee details what we'll do is we will be having all the fields. Like in the employee request we'll be having 3 plus 2 5 fields, but the id is not present. So the employee details will contain id as well as all the fields from the employee request. So I'm using the inheritance here, so this will provide me the employee details is inherited from employee request. So whatever the public properties are present in the employee request will be present in the details as well. So the employee details will contains this one plus this 5, total 6 properties should be present there. Okay, then what we'll do is so in the controller layer, so we will add the code for getting the employee details based on the id. Meantime in the service layer, basically in the service class, we need to add a method for getting the employee details based on the id. So let me write that public async task of, let's say, employee details. This methods will be returning get employee details, right? And this method is taking employee id as a input. So basically in this method we will be doing the same thing what we have did in case of insert. If you see the insert code, we prepare one SQL statement, then establish connection, then we open the database port, and then the fire the query, and whatever the result we got, process that. Same thing we'll be doing here. So let me create a SQL statement for getting the details. Okay, what I'll write is select star from table name is the same table what we have, employees table, where the employee ID field, the first field, employee ID is equal to @ID. So we need to replace this @ID with our employee ID that we get as a parameter from the function. So this is a SQL statement. So here what I'll do is I will add a code base for using again SQL connection class. Let me create object of this SQL connection is equal to new SQL connection, and to this we'll pass the connection string as a parameter, so which is a global variable in our case. You can see it here. Okay, so now we have SQL statement, we have the SQL connection object. Again what we'll do is using SQL command object new SQL command, and what I'll do is I'll pass the SQL statement and SQL connection object. Next thing what we can do is once this SQL connection is created, we can like open a connection port to database, and once this is executed we can close that as well. Okay, so while what I'll do is so whenever we receive the employee ID, we need to replace @ID field in this command using that employee ID. So for that we can leverage this SQL command dot parameters dot add with value. There is this method. What this method is do, @ID this field. Okay, we'll be replacing that with the employee ID, and then we need to execute the query and get the response. So here you can see there is this class called SQL data reader. So this class will allow us to read the number of like rows or the whatever the query output to us. So I'll create object of that is equal to await cmd dot SQL command dot, and so we can execute the query. So with the help of the execute reader async method. Okay, and what are the output that we got, we can process that. So let's say we executed at this point, and the reader object, let's say it has content the number of rows present. What we can write here is the reader has rows. Okay, if this is true then do something. If this is not true, basically the SQL command that we have fired is executed but the output doesn't contain any rows. So in this case what we can do is once we got the rows, we can read that await reader object dot read. I'll use the asynchronous method, and then what I'll do is I'll create a employee details object, the class that we have created. Emp is equal to new employee details. So the employee details class, I'll create that, and I'll read one by one property from this reader and assign it to the employee. So for that, either you can write like this or you can write like this as well. Let's say the first name is equal to reader dot get string, this is the first property, and your employee ID, employee details, right? There is this ID field. Okay, where is the service class? ID is equal to reader dot get integer. Let's say the 0th field. Get string. Let me duplicate this. Same way we'll read the last name. Same way we read the email, then salary, and then is active field. Is active field. Okay, so the first property will be the ID, second will be the first name, third will be the last name, fourth email, fifth, and if you see the salary field is decimal. Get decimal field. Get so boolean. So this is this field, because is active, salary, these are the let me open the SQL structure and show you. So is active is a boolean field, salary is a decimal field, ID is an integer field in the schema of this table that we have specified, and will return the object. Which is employee. So this employee, EMP. So in case of failure, will return just null. So this function has been completed now. Again, see what we have done. So this is the get employee details function, which will take an employee ID. We have prepared a query here, and then we have established the connection, open the connection port, we create a SQL command object, and then replace the ID from the query with the employee ID, SQL data reader. So then we executed it. If the output contains row, then we read one by one and get into the employee object, and we are returning that particular employee object. Okay, if the reader row doesn't contain anything, we are just simply returning null from this function. So this way we have completed the service layer. Let's invoke this get employee details from our controller. So here in the get employee by ID, I'll write first try catch to handle the exception. Catch exception ex. If something occurs, we'll just log the exception. And return the 500 status code. With the message. So in the try block, what we'll do is we will invoke the method from the service layer. So the underscore employee service is the reference variable that we have, which we initialize using the dependency injection. So using that, I'll call the get employee details method, which takes, if you see, employee ID as a parameter. So this employee ID will pass to that, and this will return, this method will return the employee details type object. So I'll create employee details emp detail object, will handle here. If emp details equal to not equal to null, then return OK object and the employee details. Otherwise, what we can return is, if it is null, then we can return not found employee with let me use the template string with id. Basically this is employee id not found in database records. So this is something the get API what we have written. Again, see the get employee by id, this will take employee id as an input. It will invoke service layer which will create established connection with the SQL database and provide us the implementation of that. Let's test this one API. Let me up the service and let's say in the database what we have. If I fire this query on the what database we have created is MyDB. So we have 3 records. Let's say I will pass employee ID as a 2. Let me see the server started. It is starting. So you can see the server has been started on 7321 and we have write get route the API endpoint API/employee get employee by id. So let me try it out. So this is expecting a parameter of integer. Will pass 2 in the input and let's hit on the execute button. So it is saying system cast exception, which means there should be error while casting. Let me fix that. So in this, so basically this one, in the get employee details, so we cast it to 16. So this is 32-bit. Let's start the server again and test it. So basically this field is integer 32, hence in the casting it gave exception. Again, try it out. I will pass employee ID as a 2, click on execute. So it's saying again that unable to cast decimal to string, which means 0, 1, 2, 3. So there should be some exception here while casting. Let's add a breakpoint and debug it. So I can see one mistake here. So first property is ID, second is first name, last name, email should be the third, fourth should be the salary, and fifth should be is active field. So this should be the correct code. Let's run. Sorry for my mistake. Now it should work properly. Let's try it now. Let's pass employee ID as 2 and see the response. So you can see the response employee with ID 2. This is the field. if I pass employee ID 1, what I'll get, so the Peter Walker something, this is the employee ID 1, Peter Walker. Let's see if we pass the invalid, let's say 10, what we'll get is employee with 10 is not found, 404. Let's say if we pass negative 10, so it is a bad request, please enter a valid employee ID. So this way we have covered this get API for getting the employee details. In next video I'll try to cover get all employees and delete employee with ID.